Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam, ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'd, ahbati fillah, assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As'al Allah kareem, Rabbil arsh al-azim, an yatawallana fi dunya wal akhirah. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, accepts our good and forgives our evil, puts this on our scale of good deeds, and allows for this to be a source of good for other people to be guided to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through. Alhamdulillah, I thought it would be beneficial as there's so much great controversy in this time. And it seems like it oscillates, it goes in cycles where there is a revival of the Fitnah Takfeer or the Takfeereen. They have more nashat, more activity during certain times in their ideology. It spreads more to the youth. And it will continue until the day of judgment. But it's very important for Ahlul Sunnah to stand and to deal with the doubts of the people of bid'ah and desires, as the A'immat Salafee-Jihaadee, Ridwanullahi alayhim, they did. They stood firm based on the Book of Allah and the Sunnah, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. So I think in light of this, we're just going to read and try to benefit with some ta'liqat from Shaykh Saleh, as-Saleh, rahmatullahi alayhi, rahmatan wasiyah, and his beneficial treatise, which is entitled The Fitnah of Takfeer. The Fitnah of Takfeer. And Fitnah, we're talking about discord, we're talking about tribulation, we're talking about trial, we're talking about that which is harmful. Fitnah is not a good thing. And the Fitnah of Takfeer being the ideology predominantly of the Khawarij, but it is the concept of declaring someone to be a disbeliever. And as we'll get into the treaties, we'll find that there are what is known as disbelievers who are the asliyin, kuffara asliyin, people who disbelieve in that they're from the foundation. You don't have to apply the conditions of takfir. They have already been made takfir of by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning anyone's not a Muslim. Anyone's not a Muslim, even Ahl Kitab, that they are kuffar asliyin. And those people who where the fitna really arises and the revival of this ideology is when it comes to declaring another Muslim to be a disbeliever in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where you find a lot of the youth getting involved in these issues. You have a lot of people who are ignorant and people who have zeal. They're zealous about the religion. They may love the deen, but they don't love it based on knowledge. Because how many people, as Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala mentioned, how many people that they intend something good, but that it ends up being something evil and corrupt. So we're going to go over the Sheikh's treatise, and it's very brief. So hopefully we can do it in about a half hour or something, insha'Allah ta'ala. And we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy upon him and bless him with Jannat Naeem for this beneficial treatise that we're able to share for those who wish to listen and hopefully gain some benefit, even if it's one beneficial point, or even if it's a reminder of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the traits that we shouldn't exhibit, and that which is a distortion and an aberration in the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he begins, he says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, and those who follow him ila yawm ad-din. He said the title, Fitnah of Takfeer, the trials and tribulations associated with imputing kufr on Muslims, rulers, or the rules, is one of the most dangerous fitan in our time. So here the Shaykh is talking probably, I think he wrote this in 2006. This fitna has been going on, since the time of the Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala and the Tabi'een is where it began. And so it's always the fitna is always present in the ummah, but it has revivals. It has revivals in times when these ideologues or new people who are infected with this aqidah and these concepts, or the politics change, or the world politics change, the politics of Muslim governments, all the things going on in the world, that during different eras, you'll find the Khawarij being revived and their ideology being revived, and may Allah protect us from them. So he's writing in context, in light of this, in light of probably what began with some of the dawah and statements of al-Maududi. For those who are unaware of Abu Ala Maududi, and after him Sayyid Qutb and others who followed their path and their emphasis on the concept of rulership, of hakimiyah. And with this became a very strong political call for them. That became the crux of Tawheed. It isn't that they didn't talk about rububiyyah, the lordship of Allah, but for them, it became the most important thing, and the most important aspect for them is rulership and taking rulership and revolution. And this is what you see. The contemporary Takfiris are very infected and affected by this ideology. And Sayyid Qutb is like a reviver in the 20th century of that afkar, because after he was executed by the Egyptian authorities, then after him, there were many groups and many ideologues and other extremists, Takfeer wa Hijra, and others who took it way to a whole nother step, Shukri Mustafa, others who took that extremism to a very high level of extremism. And extremism, as Imam Fawzan mentions, when we talk about it in the Arabic language, he says that tajawuz al-had. Tajawuz al-had, meaning going beyond the boundary. So if you say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a siratul mustaqim for us to follow, and tajawuz al-had means you go beyond that. You say, oh, no, it's not enough that this straight path, this road is going like this. I think I need to go out here a little bit. I need to make it a little broader, and this is going beyond. So instead of praying, they say, no, we have to pray 50 times a day. And that is what's wajib upon us. This is tajawuz. This is going beyond the bounds. No, the Prophet ﷺ left us with that which is perfect and perfect guidance, and that's praying 5 times a day. What you do beyond that, you'll be rewarded from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as long as you do not innovate in the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this misleading thought has spread amongst many of the youth in the Muslim world, east and west, north and south. Many of these youths are greatly motivated by their emotions and their vigilant care concerning the deen. So it means that they have this zealous, they do love Islam. You'll find so many of the youth, they do love Islam, and they believe that this is al-wala wal-bara, and that they're defending the love and the hate for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But they go to tajawuz al-had, as we said. As such, they took many of that which they received from the followers of desires, the people of bid'ah. These followers of desires have renewed the principles and thoughts of the early Khawarij and have become an extension of them. This has led to declare takfir on Islamic societies at large and on all Muslim leaders without exception. The consequences of this have been very terrible, and with blood being shed. So here the Shaikh is talking about how this bloodshed and how this travesty has infected us in contemporary times. Has caused widespread rebellion, widespread protest, widespread fitnah, and killing between the believers, and some of the most extreme and evilest of concepts, and even going beyond some of the things of the original Khawarij. The original Khawarij would have never wore hijab to make their thing. For them, they did not believe the means justify the ends. But the contemporary Khawarij and Takfiris, they believe the means justify the end. So this is one difference you find between these two groups, is that the contemporary groups, they're a product of contemporary society and contemporary ideologies. So they're not just like pure Khawarij, like the original Khawarij, as far as everything in Aqidah. Rather, they mix a lot of their ideology. For example, this is why you see Ahl Sunnah speaking so ill against Ikhwan Muslimin as a ideology, or as the ideologies that they kind of propound, because what you find is Ikhwan Muslimin, that Sayyid Qutb, of course, was a member of Ikhwan Muslimin. Before him, the founder of Ikhwan Muslimin was Hassan al-Banna, and he was not as, didn't have the radical elements and the violence because Sayyid Qutb was tortured very badly and very harshly. So he was a product of that. So for him, the horrid things that he experienced in prison very much affected and infected his ideology as well as his aqidah, and as well as his false aqidah. And then his ideas became more politicized. They were already politicized. They became more politicized. So why the scholars of today, they speak so harsh against Ikhwan Muslimin, because Ikhwan Muslimin, a big part of their goal, when you go into the depths of their methodology, you'll find a lot of it is revolved around leadership. And then what you have is you have many contemporary movements that integrate. They will integrate different ideologies. So they'll have a mix with Ikhwan Muslimin politics and Ikhwan Muslimin methodology, and then they will mix it with some Salafi aqidah. And this is where you find the bid'ah. This is where you have these groups as are referred to as Sururi or Qutubi or some of the other ideologues and their movements in contemporary times, because they were a mix. They tried to blend what they found that they thought was good from Ikhwan Muslimin, and they made a hybrid between that and Salafiyah, returning back to the Salaf. And when you do that, that means you've already contradicted that returning back to the Salaf. You've already compromised it. You've already replaced the madhab with this aspect of rulership and taking the rulership and revolution and all the other aspects and the political philosophies that are generally alien to Islam. And they have adapted and co-opted into Islam and to make this hybrid ideology. And that is what infects the youth, because we are a product. If we have to be honest, we are products of our environment. We're products of contemporary society. I was born in this century, so I am a product of this, of my society, of the ideas of my culture, my people, meaning African American people, that we have a revolutionary culture because of our unique circumstances in America. So these ideas, no doubt, they influence who I am. They're a part of my asl, because I was a conscious Black man, conscious of those movements. So as a Muslim trying to adhere to the book and the Sunnah, you've got to alienate un-Islamic ideologies. You've got to sidestep that. You've got to push aside anything which contravenes and contradicts Islam, and you can't co-opt revolutionary theory, Marxist theory, Black Panther ideology, Nation of Islam concepts to fit Islam. So this is the purity of the Salafi dawah, and this is what Shaikh Saleh as-Saleh was upon, rahmatullahi alayhi, rahmatin wasiya. He goes on to say, he says, this misleading thought is spread amongst many of the youth, and that overall the consequences are tremendous and terrible. So he goes on to mention, he says, the definition of kufr, the definition of disbelief. He said, to better understand takfir, it is necessary to first define kufr. Linguistically, the term kufr means covering and shielding. If an object covers something, then that object kafarahu, meaning it covered it. Because who here is a pronoun. It's what we say, damir mutassil, because it's attached to that word, kafarahu. Okay, so it's attached to the other word. So we call this a damir. We call this a pronoun that is, we don't have that exactly in English, but we have these pronouns. Okay, we have these dama'ir. So he says, similarly, it is said that the farmer, when he puts the seed in the ground and covers it with soil, is a kafir from the linguistic point of view. Understand, there's a difference between what we say mustalahat shar'iyya wa logawi, okay? Linguistic terminologies and sharia-based terminology. So the word kafir is in the Arabic language, and it doesn't always have to mean disbelief or something like this. As we see that if we look at its root and its linguistic origin, you could say kafara falah al-hab or something like this. The farmer, he covered the seed. Okay, the farmer, he covered the seed. And here the word kafara is referring to covering. Okay, and that's the linguistic use. covered the seed with dirt. As for the Islamic meaning, sometimes the word kufr means the major kufr, which takes a person out of the fold of Islam. Kufr could also refer to the lesser type, which does not take a person from the fold of Islam, known as kufr al-asghar. Islamically, the kafir is called a kafir because he covered and shielded the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore, the kafir did not recognize the favor of Allah upon him and did not give thanks to Allah. Rather, he denied the favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then what? Didn't worship him and him alone. Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah is in the medium course. Ahl Sunnah, they're in the middle. With respect to all fundamental matters in Islam, they are between the two extremes. The excessive ones, the ghulat, the extremists, those who go beyond the bounds, who exceeded the limits, and the negligent ones, as some people like to use the term mumayya or something like this, the people who waste and throw away the principles and are, so he's saying ifrat wa tafrit, going between these two extremes. Allah described this in the noble Quran, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, thus we have made you a just nation. You're just, you're in the middle, you're balanced. Similarly, regarding the matter of takfir, Ahl Sunnah is in the medium course between extremism and negligence, meaning Ahl Sunnah does make takfir, but they look at the Quran, they look at the Sunnah, they look at the conditions, they look at the criterion, and they look at the dawabit, they look at all these principles and issues, because this is a serious adjudication to judge someone with disbelief. And similarly, regarding the matter of takfir, Ahl Sunnah is in the middle. The kafir is of two types. The first type is al-kafir al-asli, and we talked about this in the beginning, the original kafir. This includes all those who are not Muslims, including the Christians and the Jews. Anyone who doubts the kufr of al-kafir al-asli is himself a kafir. Okay, it's very dangerous because there's a lot of Muslims who don't even know this about their deen. The second type is the apostate, who was born to two Muslim parents, who is in the stage of adulthood, rejected Islam, either by speech or by action, or of course, the Shaikh didn't mention, by i'tiqad, by belief. Okay, maybe their belief is outside the fold of Islam and they left Islam. So this is the principle of takfir that we're usually referring to, that you hear referred to more often than not, is talking about the people who have left Islam. Okay, or meaning, sorry, the people who at least we can attribute and associate them with Islam in some way. We're not talking about kuffar asliyin. And the concept of takfir also, something which is very important that people get confused. And I'm not sure if the Shaykh, I think he talks about this, but I'll just go over this really quickly and then we'll see if he goes over this. That primarily takfir, this concept of declaring someone to be an apostate or to be a non-Muslim, it's of two types. Two types. And that means those two types are takfir mutlaq or takfir al-ma'ayyan. Takfir mutlaq, which means the general takfir. And that refers to, as some of the mashayikh, they mention a wasf, a description. It's like a description of someone who does or believes or says an act of kufr. Okay, that is so then basically, if you were to say whoever does such and such, they have disbelieved. That is called takfir mutlaq. So if we say, for example, whoever steps on the Quran has disbelieved. Okay, that's a wasf, that's a description. That's a description of a person who goes and steps on the Quran. It's not talking about a specific individual. Takfir ma'ayyan is when you then apply that ruling, that general ruling, to an individual. The general ruling to an individual. That's why we call it takfir al-ma'ayyan. Now we're saying, oh, Khalid, we saw you step on the Quran. Mufti, we saw you step on the Quran. Muhammad, we saw you step on the Quran. Kim, we saw you step on the Quran. Fatima, we saw you step on the Quran. So you disbelieve. You know, this is an act of disbelief. But there are other conditions. That's where the conditions of takfir and so forth become applicable. So when we talk about takfir mutlaq, the general takfir, that's a general description. Whoever does this, they disbelieve. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes the general takfir when he says in Surah Al-Bayyinah, لم يكن الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب والمشركين ومشركين منفكين حتى تأتيهم البينة. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes takfir of the people of Ahl Kitab and the mushrikeen. Okay, and he refers to them as Sharr al-Bariyah and many other places in the Quran. So here that's an example of takfir mutlaq. That means anybody who fits that description of being from a person of the book or being a pagan, a mushrik, then they are not a Muslim by default. They fit that description. So we say that's a general ruling. Whoever falls under that, then that's their case. If we're going to apply it to an individual, then we say, oh, Jeff, he goes to church, he, wears a cross and stuff like this. He's not a Muslim. We may takfir on Jeff specifically. That's takfir al-ma'ayyan. Okay. Now, so he goes on to say, he says, views of Ahl Sunnah and the different sects regarding takfir. He says, the people are divided into three categories regarding takfir. The first category is al-Khawarij. So he's talking about the groups and the sects with regards to this concept, with regards to takfir. They impute kufr on the Muslim due to major sins, with some have gone to the extent to impute kufr or to declare kufr on the Muslim due to minor sins. Similarly, they declare kufr on any Muslim who does not believe the same as them. So also their rivalries, the original Khawarij, they would make takfir on the people who differed with them and who rivaled them. You also find this concept with many of the contemporary takfiri groups. Many of them, Jamaat Takfir wa Hijra, they were known. They used to make hijra in Egypt. They would go to the mountains. Shukri Mustafa and Abdul Salam Faraj. These people, they cut themselves off from the society. They said, no, Egypt is a Jahiliyyah society. Egypt is not a Muslim society. So then they would go live in the mountains and they would declare takfir of their families. If you were married and your wife didn't want to come, you divorce her and you make takfir of her and you make al-wala wal-bara based on those concepts and based on your hijrah to this mountain and to their sect, to their group. So they declare anyone who disagrees with them to be disbelievers, just like the contemporary takfiris who always say, oh, you guys are murjia, because they disagree. They don't like someone who says, no, hey, there's conditions for making takfir. Hey, wait a minute, slow down. There are mu'ana. There's things which prevent making takfir. Hold up a minute. There are also, we leave that to the people of knowledge. Hey, wait a minute, the people of knowledge are the people of Ahl Sunnah. So how is it you're going to disagree and make takfir to them and call them murjia and call them scholars for dollars and call them this and that and the other and all and down the line that we hear from the contemporary dogs of the fire. Similarly, they make takfir on any Muslim who does not believe the same as them. And so, like I said, this was a trait of both the original and the contemporary, a lot of the contemporary Khawarij. As such, they have made the blood and wealth of most Muslims permissible. This group has an extension in our time and exists in many parts of the Muslim world. The second group is the Murjia. They claim that Iman is not affected by any sinful act. Even if the Muslim commits a major sin, they say all Muslims are believers and nothing affects faith. Although the beliefs of al-Murjia comprise different positions, this is an overall summary of their view. So it's good here. The Shaikh is just given, I really like this, his short treatise. This is about as succinct as you could get in talking about such a complex topic. And that's why I chose to go through it. It is absolutely fantastic for its size. For this to be in such a short and small treatise, it is full of important foundation principles around this concept, which is this concept of takfir, which is such a controversial topic in contemporary times. Ahl Sunnah are on the medium course between the two extremes. They don't rush to declare takfir or kufr on the Muslim while not refraining from declaring kufr on him if the person commits that which Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam declared to be kufr. However, they note the Muslim who may say or do that which is considered kufr should not have kufr declared on him, specifically ma'ayin, until the evidence is established on him, giving him the proof, with all the conditions of imputing kufr fulfilled and all the impediments removed. Right there, the Shaikh just gave you this is what takfir is. This is the concept of takfir to Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, that we look to see, are there impediments to making takfir? We look to see that the conditions of takfir are there. We look to see, is the action, the statement, the belief, is it a belief of disbelief? Aslan. Some people make takfir because you didn't make hijrah. Let's give a good contemporary example. ISIS were much more extreme than Al-Qaeda. If you look at the texts of Al-Qaeda, their magazines and their literature that you can find, it differs from ISIS. ISIS were very extreme, and that they were very much, the al-wala wal-bara for them was very strong as far as having love and hate in the bay'at for their leader. Al-Qaeda, they had bay'at to Osama bin Laden, then he was killed. They had it to Ayman Zawahiri, and I believe he was killed. And somewhat you could say, what's his name? Abu Musab, I forgot his place where he was from in Jordan, his village, Zarqawi. Abu Musab az-Zarqawi, he was also kind of breaking away from Al-Qaeda, and some call him, you could almost say, the grandfather of ISIS, because his tactics were more where ISIS more metamorphosized and changed from Al-Qaeda. They changed from that, and they tried to really implement a sectarian war with the Shia. They said, hey, these guys are mushrikeen, let's blow up their shrines, let's do this. Whereas Al-Qaeda leadership was like, no, let's take one thing at a time. Let's deal with, these people and these people first. Let's not open up war on all fronts. ISIS said, no, let's go with everything. Let's anybody who, and if you're not with us, you're against us and you're disbelievers. So they made takfir of the Taliban. They made takfir of Al-Qaeda and so forth. This is why you had fighting between them in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq. And the reason I'm sharing this, and because this is literally what I spent probably 5 years of my life studying. This was my PhD thesis, and my master's thesis was about these groups and the metamorphosis of the Khawarij. And so this is, I'm giving you from my research. So anyhow, and with Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, we see that there are conditions, there are criterion, there are impediments to making takfir. He goes on to mention, he says, important matters regarding takfir. First, before takfir can be established, all conditions must be fulfilled, all impediments removed. Impediments are things that block you, okay? The impediments, and I think he's going to give us that, which, inshallah ta'ala. From the conditions of making takfir are knowledge, choice, and intent, meaning that a person was knowledgeable about the issue they did, that they had a choice, they weren't being forced, no one had a gun to their throat and said, hey, utter this statement of kufr, write this book of kufr, okay? This is choice and intent, the qasd. So I could be talking to you right now, and especially we're talking about these issues of kufr and stuff, I could easily say a statement of kufr by mistake as a slip of a tongue and not realize it. Do you make takfir of me then? No, of course not. Of course not. Limada? There was no intent. It was just a khata lafdiyya. It was a mistake in my tongue, as we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala excuses mistakes. And so, so this is why it's very important. Intent is also one of the conditions for someone doing this. A deliberate action or saying of disbelief and acceptance. This implies determining whether the person knows his action is kufr and he has chosen it without being compelled. And this is why the scholars of Ahl Sunnah are always emphasizing iqama al-hujjah, establishing the proof. That means you're teaching, whether it's a leader, whether it's a minister, whether it's a lay person, whoever it is, that that if you go to the books, like especially those detailed books, like from Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah is probably the most detailed about these issues, and Shaykh al-Islam ibn al-Qayyim. And then before them, there's even Imam Ghazali, Imam Nawawi. So many scholars throughout history in the different madhabs, they detailed many of these things about takfir. And one of the consistent principles that you find from the people of knowledge of Ahl Sunnah throughout time, and an accepted principle, is that you need to establish the proof. You need to teach the person. If the person fell into an act of disbelief, they fell into a statement of disbelief, that you teach them. You say, hey, listen, this is disbelief. And you show them the proof. Allah says in the Quran, the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, authentic, and then you teach them. And this is not what the extremists do, the Khawarij. They don't do this at all. They just make takfir like nothing. I've seen Khawarij in the middle of khutbahs stand up and call the imam, the khatib, a kafir, and walk out of the Jumu'ah. We've seen every kind of nonsense and insanity because of people and their ignorance and their zealousness. And this is what the original Khawarij had. So he goes on to say, he says, this implies determining whether the person knows his action is kufr and he has chosen it without being compelled. Moreover, it must be shown that the person was deliberate in his action and is content with it. From the impediments of takfir are affirmation of an error, ignorance, compulsion, and misinterpretation. Okay. Ahl Sunnah checks into both the impediments and conditions before imputing kufr on a specific person. That's very important. And even those takfiris who claim to love Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, one of the things Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah said, لَيْسَ كُلُّ أَحَدٍ يَقَعْ فِي كُفْرٍ تَكُونْ كَافِرٍ أو كما قال. He said something which means not everyone who falls into an act of disbelief that they automatically become a disbeliever. That is such a powerful statement that Ahl Sunnah grasps onto, because someone can make a mistake. Someone could have said it out of jahil. He could be a new Muslim. He could be anything. There's all kind of scenarios which are impediments to making takfir on an individual. This is why, due to the complexity of this, what do we say? Ahl al-ilm. Those people who are knowledgeable, those people who are well grounded in knowledge, they're the ones who indulge in these issues and make these rulings. Likewise, if you go to any Muslim country, those issues of takfir that are, when it comes to a hukum, they're going to go to the judge. I don't care if you're in Indonesia or you're Saudi Arabia. They're going to go there. You're not, even the scholars, no matter how beloved they are, they may make a ruling, a general ruling, or they may say so-and-so because it was asked in a question or something, and it was described in this and that and the other. But generally, it's only going to be a hukum shari where it's accepted is when they go to the judge. That shows you how serious it is. It has to go to an Islamic judge. He's going to sit that person down and they will go through those masail. But it's not going to be just any Tom, Dick, and Fatima. They're not going to be able to do it. And this is the problem in the fitnah of takfir. This is what Shaykh Saleh, as-Saleh is talking about, and how many of our ulama have explained this, and how many of Ahl Sunnah, Qadiman wa Hadithan, have explained this, that, hey, stay out of this. As they say, stay in your lane in knowledge. Why do we have takfiri trolls always on the internet, always running their mouth, blabbering, slobbering all over the place? Wipe your slobber up and learn Islam. Wipe your slobber and learn Islam. That means you need a bib. And if you don't know what a bib is what we put on children, and then they, it goes around their neck. So that way, when they're learning to eat cereal and they're eating yogurt or what, I forgot what we call applesauce. The applesauce is not staining up their clothes. But the takfiris, they don't pay attention. They're young. They're new to the deen. They may have been born Muslim. They may be mubtadi abad that studied even in Islamic universities and stuff, but they're still misguided dogs of the fire. And with that, they still slobber, and it's all in their beard. They need to clean their beards, and they need to wear a bib, and they need to be humble and worship Allah and fear Allah when they are making these issues of takfir and these hukum ahkam on everyone in the world. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So the Shaykh, he said, first, before takfir can be established, all conditions must be fulfilled, all impediments removed from the conditions of making takfir, and we mentioned that. And he said, Ahl Sunnah, they check into that. He said the second important issue is the declaration of takfir on someone is extremely dangerous. It's an extremely dangerous matter. No one should indulge in takfir except those who are firmly established in knowledge and fulfill certain criterion. This arises from the fact that the takfir is the right of Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Takfir is what? Takfir is the right of Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Therefore, it can only be established by those who are inheritors of the prophets. Who are the inheritors of the prophets? They are men. They are the ulama. They are the ulama. Ulama are the inheritors of the prophets. Alayhim afdal salatu wasalam. The ulama who make clear the ruling of Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They are the only ones qualified. Anyone else who involves himself in takfir is on a dark path of transgression and claims for himself a special right with Allah. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. This is where we had, now for a lot of you, you may not be aware, in the 90s, there were many ideologues because that was another vibrant time because of the politics. So you had a lot of individuals, a lot of them coming out of the UK, especially Faisal Jamaica, Abu Hamza Misri, Abu Qatada Philistini. All those guys lived in the UK. And so they were big ideologues in the English-speaking world. And some of them, like Abu Qatada, had crossed both lines. He was also very famous in the Arabic-speaking world. He made fatwa. The takfiris in Algeria used to refer to Abu Qatada, Philistini, a Palestinian. And then in the Arab-speaking world, you had people like Abu Muhammad al-Maqdisi, okay? And so he's also Jordanian. And so you had a lot of these ideologues infecting the youth. And it was said, and I know a lot of some of my colleagues, like Abdul Haq Baker, Dr. Abdul Haq Baker, and many, I know so many Salafis in the UK who were at one time, they studied with him. They know personally Faisal. They knew so much. And the guy, some of them said, yeah, he really did, the way he made takfir, he seemed like he was a bit unhinged. It was like he was almost losing his intellect. And you can hear it in his tapes. So he was very famous for his onslaught in pushing that ideology. He said in one of his tapes, he said, if, it would be perfectly permissible for someone to go into Buckingham Palace, and I forgot what he said. He was just saying crazy off the wall stuff. Oh, to kill a hypocrite, chase a hypocrite in Buckingham Palace and kill him there. It was just some insane stuff. And so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect our youth. And so the issue is, as a lot of youth were infected with this ideology and have still been infected. And these people did not have the right to be making these declarations. They were people of fitn, and they were people of great misguidance, and they misguided others. So we say dal mudil, meaning someone is misguided and they misguide others. It's not just sufficient that they're misguided, but they are callers. The Prophet ﷺ described them as du'at ala abwab jahannam. They are callers at the gates of the hellfire. So la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. May Allah protect us and preserve us and guide us and forgive us, rectify our condition and affairs. Ameen ya rabbil alameen. So the scholars, the true ulama, they are the inheritors of the prophets, alayhim afdal salatu salam, and they're qualified. Even with this, not all scholars, as our Shaikh Ibrahim al-Rahili used to say, Ahl Sunnah tafawat wa Ahl al-Bid'ah tafawat. Ahl Sunnah, they have different levels, and Ahl Bid'ah has different levels. So the caller might not be like a grounded student of knowledge. And the grounded student of knowledge is not like a younger one of the Mashaikh. A younger one of the Mashaikh is not like one of the major scholars, and the scholars of great status in ilm wa fiqh wa basira. They're not on the same level. Likewise, and up unto the layperson, who's a person of the sunnah, but they don't really have the knowledge and the prerequisite tools, but they believe qala Allah, qala Rasul. They're trying to practice their Islam to the best of their ability, and they're from Ahl Sunnah. So they have different levels. Likewise, the people of bid'ah. There are some people with a lighter form of bid'ah, and there's some people with more severe levels of bid'ah, and then there is that which is referred to the difference between bid'ah mukaffara or bid'ah ghayra mukaffara. Bid'ah mukaffara meaning bid'ah which takes you out of the fold of Islam. Then there's bid'ah ghayra mukaffara, which means all the other bid'ah aside from that, which does not take you out of the fold of Islam. So you might say with the Khawarij, although there's some difference of opinion, but generally we would say that they have bid'ah ghayra mukaffara. They are mubtadi'ah. There's no such thing as a Khawarij who isn't a deviant, because that's asli, he's a deviant, he's Khawarij. But that it doesn't mean he's outside the fold of Islam, because some of the people seem to understand, if they haven't studied any of these issues, they think that bid'ah means that a person is not a Muslim. No, that's not what it means. It means someone has some aberrations. They have some not just mistakes in their understanding and in their practice, and they're going beyond the bounds in some form or another, or their shortcoming. For example, someone could say, hey, I want to come closer to Allah, and that's a beautiful thing. But yet they say, you know, I'm going to increase Maghrib to 4 rakats because 3, I just don't get the same feeling as I would if I did 4. And 4 is an increase in worship, and my intention is good, so I'm going to make Maghrib, it's going to now be 4 for me. Well, that is a bid'ah. It's unacceptable. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu furad." Whoever does something in this religion of ours, or this affair of ours, will have it rejected. So that is unacceptable. So bid'ah can be bid'ah which takes you out of the fold of Islam, or bid'ah that does not take you out of the fold of Islam. And kullaha fi nar. All of it's in the fire, as the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam mentioned. So he goes on to say, as he said, that it's the right of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he says, they are the only ones qualified. Meaning, so my point of mentioning all that was to say that not all scholars are necessarily qualified. We don't say, oh, just because Shaykh so-and-so, he's our Shaykh, and he might have a lot of knowledge, but in that area that may not be his area specialties. He could be a scholar of mainly hadith in the Arabic language, and he could have it could be a scholar of tafsir, but he might not feel comfortable and be, he may be aware of the issues of takfir, but he doesn't deal with those issues because that is not his specialty and things that he feels comfortable or grounded. Just like so many scholars that do know something about the science of hadith, but they're not like Imam Al-Albani, and they will make taqleed, they will blind follow Imam Al-Albani. Why? Because he was a trustworthy scholar, an Imam of Ahl Sunnah, Imam of Ahl Hadith fi asrina, in our time. So it's permissible under those circumstances. I know I'm getting off on a little tangent. We'll try to rail it back in. Anyone else who involves himself in takfir is on a dark path of transgression and claims for himself a special right with the law. And this is one of the criticisms of the takfiris and the extremists, is they claim that you're ruling by the Sharia. They claim this, they claim that, they claim that. The reality of something is not in its claim and its name, it's in its reality. And you will find so many of the takfiris do not rule by what Allah revealed. That's the amazing thing. And as an Oromo, Oromo is a particular tribe, maybe the majority tribal group in Ethiopia. And it's a proverb that they have, a friend of mine, Muslim as well, alhamdulillah, and he used to tell me that this proverb, of course I can't say it in Oromo, but the one who's making the most noise, he's always pointing the finger, and 3 fingers are returning back at him. And so I never forgot that proverb, which is so true. A lot of times you see somebody's calling everyone a mubtadi'ah, but you see that when it comes down to his aqidah and his issues, you find that he's really has a lot of misguidance himself. He's really maybe even more misguided than some of the people he attacks. Likewise with the takfiris, you'll find they always claim not ruling by this leader, not ruling, this one's not ruling by what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed. And this takfiri himself in his own house doesn't rule by what Allah reveals. He makes takfir, he makes the Muslims' blood halal. Is that ruling by what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed? No, that's a big mukhalafa. It's a major wicked sin. It's a major, and it's a ruling. So this is one of the things that some of the ulama, they mention the contradiction of the Khawarij and the Takfiriyin themselves, is that they claim that they love the rulership of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but yet they take this right based on ignorance and zeal and whatever else, and then they rule on other people, not by what Allah revealed. Because, as we've mentioned as another qaida, which is an important fiqh principle, which is al-yaqeen la yuzul al-yaqeen bi-shak, that certainty is not removed by doubt. Certainty is not removed by doubt. So the fact that someone's a Muslim, if someone comes to me and anybody say, oh yeah, this brother, he took a shahada a while ago, he's been Muslim for years or whatever, or they invite me on Facebook or whatever, we make acquaintances, his name is Muhammad, I assume Muhammad is a Muslim. And I don't investigate, oh my gosh, let me check, let me make an investigation, let me do, no. Yaqeen and Muhammad, he prays and stuff like this. We know a little bit about Muhammad, he prays and stuff like this, he worships Allah. Muhammad is a Muslim. We don't remove his Islam with doubtfulness. Al-yaqeen la ashak la yuzul al-yaqeen. Doubtfulness does not remove certainty. Muhammad prays, he's a Muslim. We can't say I think he's a kafir. I saw him smoking a cigarette. I saw him doing this. He was with his girl. He was doing no. We can't remove that. He's not ruling by what Allah revealed. The leader is this, the leader is that. He allowed alcohol. He has this. There was a prostitute here. There was that. And it was in the news. Does that mean he's no longer a Muslim? So we don't speculate. Even if we see wicked sins, those wicked sins are not good. We don't defend wickedness and wicked sins. That's wickedness. That's weak iman. But removing someone's Islam is very serious. Now, hence it is not permissible to make takfir on anyone except the one whom Allah and his messenger declared to be as such, due to the seriousness of takfir and its limits as established by Allah and his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala said, that is why the people of knowledge and sunnah, what did he say? The people of knowledge and sunnah? What do you say in Arabic? فَلِهَذَا كَانَ أَهْلَ الْعِلْمِ وَالسُّنَّةِ. I love it. I love it. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, that is why the people of knowledge and sunnah did not resort to making takfir on those who oppose them. Whose minhaj is that? That's the Khawarij. That's Abu Qatada. That's Faisal. That's whoever. All those guys. And their friendly compadres that are in contemporary times. Again, that is why the people of knowledge and sunnah did not resort to making takfir on those who oppose them, even if the opponent makes takfir on them. And that's one of the things we've got to harness our nafs in, because sometimes people call you a mubtadi'ah. Oh, you're mumayya. I've had people say I'm mumayya, I'm mubtadi'ah. Some people have called me khawarij. People call me takfiri. They've called me everything under the book. But that doesn't mean I have to then in turn. So it takes refraining your nafs. You can't reciprocate a wrong. The Prophet ﷺ in light of this said, La darar wa la dirar. No harm and no reciprocating harm. So you don't want to lower your standards and lower yourself to be following their principles. Rather, we want to adhere to the principles of Ahlul Sunnah. Let's make sure our laptop doesn't poop out. I'm going to have to put this because I do want to finish this. And it's only it's not that much more, a couple pages, so it will be another 15, 20 minutes for those who can. Let's see what happens. So the statement of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he goes on to say, he says, that's why the people of knowledge and sunnah did not resort to making takfir on those who oppose them, even if the opponents make takfir on them. That this is because the matter of kufr is a legal right established by Sharia, and therefore the person cannot punish by the like. Just like if someone who belies you and makes lies against you, you cannot spread lies about him. Understand this. This is beautiful kalam of Shaykh al-Islam. Or if someone fornicates with members of your family, you cannot fornicate with members of his family. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. This is because fornication and lying are haram. They're unlawful. They're unlawful being Allah's right. Similarly, takfir is a right that belongs to Allah. Hence, we do not declare kufr except on whom Allah and his messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam declared as such. Honestly, this is high powered, and what a beautiful statement. We could study that statement, and maybe we will have a sitting sometime. Just we'll look at the statement of Shaykh al-Islam right there is high powered. He said, Shaykh Saleh, he said, the danger involved with takfir is not limited to the transgression against the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The person who declares takfir on others also risks falling into that which he accused his brother with. This is in line with the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam when he says, any person who calls his brother, ya kafir, or unbeliever, has in fact done an act through which this unbelief would return to one of them. If it were so, as he asserted, then the kufr of the man was confirmed. But if it was untrue, it returns to him. So that shows us the danger, and that's in Sahih Muslim and also Tirmidhi. Similarly, in another narration, the Prophet Salawatu Rabbi wa Salamu alayhi said, if someone accuses another of fusuk, calling him a fasik, or accuses him of kufr, such an accusation will revert to him if his companion is innocent. And this is in Bukhari. The third important matter, this is meaning the third important matter with takfir, is that takfir causes hate amongst people, especially amongst those who are referred to as kafir, since no one likes to be labeled as a disbeliever. In fact, this can lead to fights and bloodshed, which will inflict evil on the individuals involved and the society at large. Shaikh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah said, and it is not the right of anyone to impute kufr on any one of the Muslims, even if he makes a mistake and does wrong, until evidence is established upon him and the matter is made clear to him. And the one whose Islam is affirmed with certainty, then it ceases not to exist with him due to doubt. Did we just not give you this principle? Rather, his state of Islam comes to an end only after the establishment of the proof and the elimination of the unclarity, the removal of shak or doubt. So meaning that when you when the scholars or a person, for example, if you're in the masjid and someone does something, new Muslim or not new Muslim, regardless, you hear a statement of kufr or something, and this happens. I've had it happen at work many times in Saudi Arabia and here in America, and you have this from your Muslim brothers and sisters because of a lack of knowledge. So they might utter a statement of disbelief or joke about the deen. So you aqama alayhi al-hujjah, so you establish for them the proof, say, hey, listen, whoa, be careful. Statements like that, they can take you out of the fold of Islam. Don't even go near joking about the religion, joking even in a roundabout way, a square about way. I don't care. Stay away from it. Beware. So you have to remove the doubt from the person. You give them the proof, and that and the scholars differ extensively. That's a whole nother issue that we're definitely not going to talk about. I did talk about that in my master's though, which is the difference between aqam al-hujjah wa fahm al-hujjah. Fahm al-hujjah. Establishing the proof, giving someone the proof, and making sure someone understands the proof. Okay, so it's very important. And one thing I want to say, and I'll just say the khalasa on that, is that of course a person needs to understand. You can't just say, someone, he's an Indonesian, and you say, what you said was wrong, and you just give him an ayah and he doesn't even know Arabic, or you say in Arabic, you give him the proof, okay, and he only knows Bahasa. No, he has to understand. It needs to be in a language that he understands. You can't just give him the proof and say, hey, I established a proof. He's still disbelieving in Allah. He hasn't changed. No, they need to understand, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Takfir practice in our time. So now the Shaikh is going to talk about during his time, which is still in our contemporary times, what has happened. First, a type of takfir practice in our time is an unrestricted takfir on the Muslim rulers who do not rule by the rule of Allah. This generalization, without details, has led many of the young Muslims to conclude that it is permissible to rebel against these rulers by force. Consequently, confrontations, bloodshed, and other problems arising from this are still growing. Moreover, it is bringing chaos and instability to the Muslim world, as it is evident to everyone. And it's not just that. We find a lot of this fitna in the English-speaking world. Look how many fights and how many issues in the UK have been about this. How many issues and fights and arguments in America about this issue. And I'm sure in France, and I'm sure in Germany. So even in Muslim minority countries, that we deal with this fitna. The fitna of takfir and the disagreement between Ahl Sunnah and Ahl Bid'ah and their various types, and the arguments and the video memes and the trolling and it goes on. It goes on. May Allah protect us and preserve us. Ameen. He says, furthermore, this thought did not stop at the rulers, but is extended to the government employees, security forces, and others. It has also reached many imams of the masajid, the muadhineen, and the scholars. This arises from the pretext that these are all collaborators with the government. Don't think that this is some exercise in theory. The Shaikh is talking about real life thought and actions of these people. Let me give you really what happened to me. This is a real example. I left Yemen. The first time I went to Yemen, I left And we left and I went to the UAE, spent a few months in the UAE. Okay. And I remember meeting a person. Now it's so many years. He was from Jordan. Okay. We got in I said, yeah, I just came from Yemen and this and that and the other. So we're getting in some discussions in Arabic. And he starts making takfeer to the government. And we start saying, I said something about Sayyid Qutb, and he got insulted. And it just grew, it escalated. And we were just going back and forth. And then I remember the adhan went off. Okay, the mueddin made the adhan. They're in the UAE. And I said, khalas, nimshi la masjid. Forget it. Let's go to the masjid. He said, I'm not going to the masjid. And I said, what's up with you? And he said, Hada masjid dirar. That is the masjid of, the masjid of harm, the masjid of the hypocrites. And I said, subhanallah. He said, the imam is a kafir, the mueddin is a munafiq, and so are the musallin, because the government gives a salary to the imam. The government's disbelieving. The imam is a disbeliever, and then the mueddin is a disbeliever. He's getting a salary too. He is a hypocrite, and then the people are praying behind these kafirs. They are hypocrites too. I don't pray in the masjid. I said, subhanallah. I said, you are misguided. I think I call him enta bon. And he said, I remember he said something really bad to me, and I was going to smack him. And then my man, who was from Uzbekistan, or he's from Tajikistan or something, name was Abdul Hakim. Anyhow, he just took me and he said, come on, let's go to the masjid. I was fuming, but that was something I'll never forget in my life. And I put that in my master's thesis, that really, I couldn't believe it when I really experienced someone. They call this Takfeer. This is like a chain Takfeer. Oh, the leader is a disbeliever, so the government, the police are disbelievers. Government employees are disbelievers. Even the mueddin is a disbeliever. This one is a hypocrite. This one is this. The people are praying in the masjid, they are this. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. Subhanallah. So he did not think it was permissible to pray in the masajid with the Muslims. This is the real misguidance. This is the grave danger. So don't think these things are so strange and that they're almost funny, and it's real. There are real people like this. So he's just wandering around in the UAE. He's not even from that country, and just it doesn't pray in the masjid. And it's not because he doesn't pray. Maybe he does pray, but he walked away. La hawla wa la quwwata, because of his takfir, because of his misguidance. Furthermore, this thought did not stop at the rulers. Okay, so he mentioned, and all of these are collaborators with the government, and that was that context. This pretext has even been extended to the Muslim society at large. Those who do not hold to the belief of these groups are considered kuffar. This is not an issue in a vacuum. This is real. As such, one is not surprised as to why they kill Muslims or bomb places where there are many Muslims. It has reached the extent that these groups have called for the complete disassociation from their societies, as we said, jihaadee-takfeeree wa hijra, thinking that all of the society is disbelievers, so they cannot stay with them. They even abandon their wives. I told you exactly this because this is documented stuff. If they do not adhere to the same belief as the person holding the takfiri principle. Similarly, if a wife holds this takfir principle, they say it is incumbent upon her to leave her husband if he does not agree with that. Furthermore, they tell their followers not to make the congregational prayers in the masjid, claiming these are not real mosques, and that the imams of the mosque are not Muslims since they were assigned by the government. This is happening in some Muslim countries, and like I said, my own eyes, my own ears, my own argument, I have witnessed this with my own person. The solution. He said the solution to this problem is to spread the knowledge of the righteous pious predecessors, meaning the Salafee-Jihaadee, al-ilm al-shar'i, as-Sahih, the sound Islamic knowledge. This comes from the knowledge taught by the noble, reliable scholars in the books of the Salaf. The young should return to the ulama to seek their advice instead of following these so-called thinkers and their takfiri books. All of those who write advocating this methodology are not even known for being from the true ulama, holding on to the path of the Salaf. On the other hand, Muslim societies and governments should take the corrective approach of adhering to the Sharia. Once this is done for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the promise of Allah to bestow strength and steadfast upon the ummah will surely be manifested. Furthermore, there should always be a hand extended to our youth who may have been influenced by Takfeer. There should be useful discussions in this matter and a refuting of the views held by them based on evidences and proof. So it's very important that we do have people who are well-grounded who can discuss this when youth and others are infected. And that is one of the reasons why I've lately been making so many videos, and I'm on this new series for now, and I'm going to produce a lot of content regarding this issue of takfir, even though a lot of people don't like that. But at least it will be there for those who want to refer to it. And some youth, I've had some youth come say to me that they did have a positive impact, and they used to be takfiri, and they used to be this, and they, alhamdulillah, came around. Not necessarily because of me, but they did come around, alhamdulillah. So this is a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If there is anything we need to emphasize every now and then, whether regarding this matter of the understanding of Islam as a whole, it is that people should be very serious about knowing Islam from its two sources, the Quran and the way of the Prophet ﷺ, in accordance with the understanding of the companions. This is the criterion of safety. This is the path that every Muslim should give his utmost effort to learn. This is the true safeguard mechanism for the individual and thus for the family and the society at large. And he says, finally, an advice to the youth. Finally, we all know that emotions are real, and care for Islam is strong motivation to its adherents. The motivation by care, sincerity, and emotion, if not guided by the following of the Prophet ﷺ in accordance with the way of the Salaf, then it can turn into a blazing fire of destruction. This is what we've said. Hence, a sincere advice is stressed again for all of our youth. Seek knowledge from its reliable sources and from the ulama who are on the path of the companions. Radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'een. May Allah, the Most High, guide us and our Muslim youth to be on the path of righteousness and wisdom, and may Allah, the Most High, safeguard this ummah from the fitnah of takfir. Wa sallallahu wasallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. And we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless, have mercy upon the Shaikh and bless him with Jannata Firdaus for such a beneficial, concise treatise on such a complex topic, the issue of takfir. Naam. So quickly, if there's any questions, we will see if there's anything. I don't think Facebook has anything, but inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum. How do you refute the point when someone says, for example, ISIS doesn't see the one committing zina is not a kafir? That's a good point. So in regards to this, one thing you have to realize, Takfiri ideology, most of the contemporary Takfiri groups don't share 100%. It's not like they're a card-carrying member of the Khawarij in that they share, even the Khawarij broke into sects. So the contemporary groups, you'll find that they have many, many more concepts of Aqidah and so forth to Ahl Sunnah. You'll find many Takfiris that share, and the ISIS compared to Al-Qaeda, Al-Qaeda, they quoted from Sayyid Qutb a lot, and they would go to Ibn Taymiyyah, okay, and stuff like this. ISIS, they will quote from the Salaf. ISIS, you'll see they bring tafsir and things like this from the Mufassirin, much more than Al-Qaeda. ISIS was a different hybrid. And so my point being is that those ideologies that they have, they're not 100%. They might not make takfir on the major center. They may only focus on leadership. That may be the main thing that they do. So generally what you find with a lot of these contemporary groups that they don't seem to move away from is, of course, they focus on leaders. For them, there are no Muslim leaders. The only Muslim leader that was legitimate during the reign, that short reign for ISIS, would have been Abu Bakr Baghdadi. That's it. Everyone else was disbeliever, even Al-Qaeda, even Zawahiri, and those people, because they didn't make bay'ah to them. So that's why they fought them and made takfir of them. The Taliban, they made takfir of them. They weren't legitimate enough. And so the point is that really isn't a doubt, but it goes to show you how the ideology metamorphosizes and how it changes and it adapts. So it takes different aspects, but some of the core principles are there of making takfir, especially of the rulers, and attacking the scholars of Ahl Sunnah. They call them Murjia, they call them everything, scholars for dollars. They've sold out. They're this scholars of Hayd when they fast, scholars of menstrual bleeding and women's issues only. They have all kind of slanderous things, and they still generally have zeal. And you'll find that they never really have true ulama, like scholars up in age, or any even reputable scholars. Like you'll never have heard of any of their scholars, almost never, except that they might be names that they know. So and so, because he's a mujahid. He's there in Iraq. He's there in Syria. He's on the battlefront. He's on their controlled territories. Like when I went through a lot of who their scholars were, I was like, man, I never heard of any of these guys. Not that I would be super knowledgeable about that, because I'm mainly knowledgeable about what's in Yemen and Saudi, and maybe a little bit of Egypt and a little bit of Jordan and places like this. But I would only know my select Salafi scholars. I mean, scholars that are known for Salafiyah and connected with other Salafi scholars and their names and their scholars. But I wouldn't know these milkshakes and other people who prop up. Maybe they fight, but they're also have a wicked, sinister ideology. But you'll see anyway that they will have aspects, of course, of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, or no one would have ever followed them. They exalt things, they emphasize al-wala wal-bara, they emphasize these different points, but it's their extremism with regards to those points. So they don't make takfeer of the zani. No, they don't do that, but they definitely would have stoned them and stuff like this. As you know, they were very quick in doing their punishments and so forth. But you'll find anytime you're in an environment like that, wa'iyadhan billah, when you have people, it's like being on steroids. If you were in a gym and everyone was in there, you're like the only one who doesn't. You would see monsters all around you who are like high on steroids. So they're quick, you're not lifting enough. They might smash your head. Likewise, ISIS, as-Shabab, and these guys, they are like their Takfeeree ideology. It's almost like steroids that they are just so amped up. That's why you had Al-Shabab. So you'd have a lot of basic fighters. Their basic fighters are not at all knowledgeable about the religion. So then they go to weddings. Okay, you've been told ikhtilat is haram. So you go to ikhtilat, this wedding, and then you end up shooting the groom. These are common stories. Or you dress up as a woman and you go blow yourself up in the souk, or you blow yourself up at the government building, just killing anybody. This is what you find Boko Haram, as-Shabab, and a lot of the other groups, they're copycat groups all around the world, or those that are affiliated with them. So you'll find that they don't necessarily make takfir of the minor sins like that, but for them, it's mostly they focus more on leaders and then your allegiance, your allegiance to the leaders. So they'll say there are no Muslim countries. The only place that's legitimate to make hijrah is to your group, to their group. And you must make bay'ah. If you don't have bay'ah, then you're outside of you're in jahiliyyah and your blood is halal. They will, this is their extremism. So they don't get you for zina, but they will kill you for a multitude of other reasons. And a lot of it has to do with allegiance to their group. You're with us or against us. And literally, I put some powerhouse quotes that I got directly from their magazines that I had I had to use proxies to get their magazines because they were blocked, especially when I was in Saudi Arabia. I used to do a lot of my research that way. And I downloaded, I still have a lot of their magazines on hard drives and stuff because I needed their sources. And what you find in there, which is amazing. So one of their concepts was, if you're in a non-Muslim Western society, if you can't make hijrah to us, you better at least have the intention. And the next best thing you can do is kill, basically. So they say that means the hot dog vendor, the old man sitting on the park bench, the old woman crossing the street, all of them are targets, just kill. This is literally what they said. That's why wasn't so crazy that you'd find those guys driving a van, somebody who's influenced by their ideology, running over people on the curbs in Europe or in America or wherever, or just anything that they could spill blood. They are the most bloodthirsty dogs that you could imagine, and infected by that ideology. So they are they are like the most extreme that we've seen in contemporary times, pretty much. There were others probably in the 80s and 70s and stuff like this, like Takfeer wa Hijra and others who did assassinations and stuff. But I think nothing on the scale. ISIS is a whole nother level. They had a media empire. They had wealth. They had conquered so much. You know, they had the Syrian army and those other armies in fear. They had the Iraqi army in fear, and they could have easily controlled their territory if they wouldn't have tried to make all their enemies all at once. If they would have had some diplomacy, they could have not been agitated everyone, and then got America and others to just wipe them, wipe out a lot of their leadership and others. But now, do you have a good contract so I could contact you about mentorship? Do you have a good point of contact? So you can contact me. Again, use my email. That's where you can start contacting me. And that is, it's on you can find it on the YouTube page here, GREENKHALID@gmail.com. How to deal with unstable household where there's fighting, arguing. Okay, I think you asked me this, or somebody else asked me the same question every live stream, not every week, every live stream. Okay. So anyway, if you have fitna in your household and you have no control over it, you just have to isolate yourself to a degree that you don't go in the fitna. If they're fighting, they're watching pornography, if they're smoking weed and stuff, you remove yourself from that environment to the best of your ability. You make sure you're not in the room for that, and you mix with them in other circumstances, plain and simple, because it's your household. You can't get away from it until you move out. Bravery and courageousness, those are somewhat innate traits, and they're also learned traits. They're both. You can hone that in. You can, the bravery, you build yourself up. You make the determination. However, don't get it twisted. So you want to command the good and the forbid the evil, which is beautiful. But again, there's wisdom in doing that, meaning you have to have wisdom and you have to have some knowledge of what is good and what is evil. For example, don't say I'm commanding the good and forbidding the evil. My parents do alcohol, they drink alcohol, they do this, they smoke cigarettes, so I'm going to throw their cigarettes away. No, that's not commanding the good and forbid. You are causing a greater fitna with your parents, and you're going to get kicked out and cut off from the family or whatever. You have to have wisdom. They have authority over you. You can't curse your parents out. You can't. So there's wisdom in doing that. And again, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi, فإن لم يستطع فبلسانه فإن لم يستطع فبقلبه وذلك عرف الإيمان." The Prophet ﷺ said in Sahih Muslim, in the hadith of Abi Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala, and he said, whoever sees a munkar, a sin, then change it with his hand. If he's unable to do so, then change it with his tongue. Speak out against it. If he's unable to do that, hate it with his heart. As long as you hate it with your heart, وَذَلِكَ عَرَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. That's the weakest form of Iman. But what is it? It's still Iman, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. Now, examples of command of ta'awun ala birri wa taqwa wa la ta'awun ala ithmi wa udwan. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that he commands us to cooperate in righteousness and piety, and not to cooperate in sinfulness and transgression. So, for example, righteousness, maybe it's giving charity. And I was thinking about this the other day, and I don't know if my colleague Abdul Haq is still there, because I thought about, we did a podcast on the doctor's lab, and we were talking about areas of cooperation with that's mutual for the Muslims in general. That means Ahl Bidah wa Ahl Sunnah. For example, if you're in the UK, you're in America, you're in Sweden, France, whatever, how do you do? And I was just thinking about this the other day, because there's a charity that I go to. It's my go-to charity. And I don't think the charity is Salafi, although it was recommended to me by Salafees. And then I just came across it the other day. All these people who I'm totally against are people who are pushing this charity. Omar Suleiman, Yasser Qadi, and some other people. All these famous Sufi from Zaytuna, not Hamza Yusuf, but African-American Zaid Shaker, I think. So all of these people, Mubtadi'ah, are pumping this charity up. That doesn't take anything away. This is a collective thing. So do we not give money to Philistine and now we can't use that charity? No, that the money is going to help Muslims that are struggling, or poor people, or people in deserving, and people in need. This is a type of ta'awun, regardless of what sect. If the Deal Bundys came to me and they said, hey, there's this homeless Muslim over here, he's living in his car, or this sister, we need to help her. I'm not going to say, Akhi, what do you say about the divine names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is the ta'awun ala birri wa taqwa, because we have a mutual religious duty to fulfill, because this person is a Muslim who needs. So this is cooperating and righteous, and that doesn't take a tahqiq of the minhaj, you know. So then, not to ta'awun ala ithmi or adwan. So if the people of bid'ah and innovation, they say, hey, we're building, the Deal Bundys come to me, hey, we're building a Deal Bundy school in Hyderabad or whatever. Well, I'm not going to give money for that. You know, I do want their kids to learn Quran, but I want them to learn the Sunnah based on the Sunnah of the Salafee-Jihaadee, the Sunnah and the understanding of the pious predecessors. So that's what I would support with my money. So I wouldn't help in, you know, oh, the Deal Bundys have a conference. They need some money for it, and I want to do a good deed. No, you can't support in assisting the people of bid'ah or the people of, you know, something which is going to go contravene the deen or cause fitna, or be, you know, you have some Muslims, maybe they are even, maybe they claim to be from Ahl Sunnah, they could claim to be Salafi, claim to be Ahl Sunnah, but all you find from them is negative and backbiting and doing things. Maybe they're doing some haram things, but their aqeedah is generally sound and their minhaj is generally sound. But that shows there's a khalal, no doubt, but they're in their iman. But however, you cannot cooperate with them in sinfulness. Plain and simple. Those are examples. It's time to go night-night. It's getting late, and I'm sure it's late wherever you guys are. And a lot of these questions are kind of almost the same questions. So I'll deal with this last question about going to the masjid of Ahl Bid'ah. As I said many times before, you can pray behind any Muslim. What did I say? Any Muslim. Third time, any Muslim. So if he's a Muslim, you could pray behind him. But if he has bid'ah mukaffara, bid'ah which takes you out of the fold of Islam, or rafida, you go and you're in a neighborhood and you see it looks like a masjid and it's the Nation of Islam, you can't pray behind them, because they believe, even if they prayed like you, because they have, bid'ah mukaffara. They have bid'ah which takes them out of what they believe Allah came in the form of a man and all this other stuff. Okay, so you cannot pray behind someone with bid'ah mukaffara, but you can pray behind. Your salat is legitimate, even though some madhabs, I think the madhab Malikiya, Imam Malik, may have prohibited praying behind a bid'ah, and there may be some other imams, but that's not sahih. The soundest view is that anyone who's a Muslim, you can pray behind. Is that the best and acceptable position? No, it's better if you can pray with Ahl Sunnah, or it's better if you can pray where, you know, there isn't mistakes being made, or whatever the case may be. Okay, that's the best. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, to accept our good and forgive our evil. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Barakallahu feekum.